Hi, this is Burr Stewart, and welcome to part 81 of my continuing series of model railroad operations videos, mostly taken on my own Burlington Northern model railroad set in 1973. Today we're going to visit some out-of-era pulled power, see the coal train one last time, and do some switching with the Proto throttle and a transfer run between the Stacy yard and Interbay yard, where we'll also do a little switching. So let's get on with it.
Well, at least in theory, it's got better.
As you know, a model railroad layout is kind of a time machine, and it takes you back into the past if you're modeling the past. And in this case, you can also move the era around. So Brian Elchlepp, my friend who models the later Burlington Northern era, brought over 3 of his diesels. You see them here, and look and sound great. He loves to detail them and put good sounding speakers in them, and he decided to do an operation over here with these 3. I want to call them modern era BN diesels, but that's not really right. They were just later than the 1973 era. They had been reworked in some instances. You can see some really nice detailing on the top of this front unit. And what he's doing now is backing a train down from Delta Yard down the High Line to Everett Junction, where he will then run the train along the low line to Bayside Yard and then around the rest of the layout. Don't worry if you're not following this. You can watch my other videos and find out how the track plan is laid out and where these places are. It doesn't really matter. It's just fun to watch trains, isn't it? That third unit is a beautiful GP30 that Brian detailed and weathered. And they're crossing from the siding to the main. The train is made up with those cars that were on the siding, left over from the last operating session. Here's a shot of the turnout at Everett Junction. This particular switch is powered by a tortoise switch machine, so you'll see it automatically flip over. There we go.
Train and 3-rail and staging does not have a produced card in it.
Now, a few minutes later, we've worked our way around the layout, and we're approaching the Mount Vernon station north of Everett. And then we cross the Skagit River Bridge. The prototype bridge is 3 spans, but I only had room for 2 here. But as you know, model railroads just do the best they can. If they imitated the real world faithfully, they would take up way more space than anyone would ever have. I think that GP30 is one of my favorite locomotives from the era that I modeled, 1973. Some of them are still in operation today, although they've been significantly remotored. The yard down below is the Stacy Street yard in Seattle. This is a double-deck layout, so that makes taking photographs a little bit challenging at times. Somebody forgot to close the door on that Rock Island boxcar. Very smooth running. Well, a few minutes later, Brian turned the train around and headed back downhill so he could show off the dynamic brake sounds. So I'll let you listen. This is the Stillaguamish River Bridge that the train is going over now. This entire scene is only about 6 inches wide. Well, now we're into the Delta Y and crossing the Snohomish River Bridge in Everett. Approaching a tunnel which doesn't exist in the real world, but I needed to do in order to work out the optics of the situation. You can get a sense of the challenge of it there. My friend Eric Van Nice decided it would be good to build a rock wall there, and I think he was right. It worked out really well. And then he built the towering spire there above the scene, which is a fun thing to look at anytime you're in the neighborhood. we can go look at the rock climbers on there. I have some friends who are rock climbers and some other friends who are baboons, or gorillas, if you want to say it. Well, now our train is admiring a new Athearn SW1500 that's in the Everett yard called Bayside Yard. And joyously for us, since Brian turned the train around in Burlington, now the GP30 is leading the consist. I held the camera near the squealer speaker so you could enjoy that squealer sound that we installed recently. That's a product made by ISE, Iowa Scaled Engineering. If you look way off in the distance, you can see the coal train moving from right to left. And as soon as we finish up this shot, we'll go over and watch that coal train going through downtown Seattle just briefly. Well, there it is. SD45s, downtown Seattle, grade crossing bells. We've seen a lot of this coal train recently. I think I published a short about it and accused it of being monotonous. And it's also featured in my full-length, hour-long video about operating sessions, which I published last week. So today we're not going to spend too much time on it since we've already seen enough of it. But it's fun to watch it running through Interbay Yard on the main line here.
I took it. Yeah, we took it. Then he got scared. Yeah, you know, I got a bit. I play a little bit.
Maybe we'll see the tail end of it coming through.
You know, I saw him a couple of, like 10 years ago. Like a 3-hour show. He's 70 years old. He doesn't have to do it.
I think he's closer, getting closer to 80 now. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah. At one point, he played black.
See how that bunch of car cards is all blues and purples? They're all cold colors. That means they need to go north from Seattle. And so my friend Scott was over and grabbed a proto throttle, and he transferred all those cars from Stacy Street in South Seattle up to Interbay Yard in North Seattle, where they can be put on a decent train that will deliver them to the right place. I took this shot like this so that you could see him using the proto throttle, but of course he was just cruising through the yard, so he didn't need to do anything fancy with it at the moment, naturally. But we'll keep trying to show the proto throttle in use from time to time, so you get the idea. It's fun. Leaving Stacy Street, we pass the King Street station, which is just on the backdrop there, and run through the tunnel underneath downtown Seattle, emerging out to a glorious view of scenic Mount Rainier, a 14,000-foot peak just south of Seattle. And then we cross through downtown Seattle along the waterfront, where there are a number of grade crossings. There's actually only one Space Needle, but for some reason I have two different versions of it on the backdrop. I'll have to look into that sometime. I know I've lectured you about this before, but model railroading is a lot more fun when you imagine the people on the ground that make it work in real life. So in this case, the brakeman got off the switch engine, went over and flipped that switch, and then got back on the locomotive. Now I did delay our movement, but that's what happens in real railroading. So we do what we can to make it realistic. I'm not sure that three-dome tank car was in use in 1973 still. It's kind of an older car, but I just had to have it. It was so cute. Well, for this operation, all that's happening is that Scott's dropping those cars on the track in Interbay, and since he didn't figure out that there was a cut of cars to take back to Stacy, he just ran light with the locomotive back on the main line. That's a nice looking, nice running locomotive, number 32. I think it's a Walthers Proto unit with an ESU decoder in it. And now we're running underneath the Dravis Avenue Bridge, which, as you know if you're a rail fan in Seattle, is one of the best spots for watching trains. Now that's very nice that he waited for the brakeman to flip that switch, but we probably should have lined it back after we went through it the first time, and then we wouldn't have had to delay the operation the second time. Oh well. Now it's on back to the Stacy Street yard. The tunnel under downtown Seattle also happens to be the tunnel underneath the stairs to the basement. That works out really well. Those Boeing tool cars are waiting to be taken to the Renton assembly plant on the Renton Rocket, which was a local train that I believe operated out of Stacy Street Yard, but I'm not sure about that. It might have come out of Interbay. There's so many things to find out about the operations of a real railroad once you start modeling it. It's like a lifetime quest. Now the next thing that happened here was Scott took a look at the car cards for one of the other cuts of cars and realized he needed to do some switching to straighten out which cars were in which order for a couple of the locals that run out of this Stacy Street yard. And I thought I'd give you a chance to just enjoy looking at the ladder. And of course this very prototypical bench that the crews would sit at while they were waiting in between jobs. Bang! Now this is where we got organized with these cards. And Scott realized it would be useful to go and sort them out on a surface. I recently installed a lip on the front edge of that shelves that the yardmasters can use for sorting cars. And you see here, these are all warm colored cars that need to be worked in the south end of the railroad. The pinks and oranges, yellows. So he's going to now pull a couple of cars out of one track and put it in another track. And so it goes for railroading in a yard. Whether it's a real railroad yard or a model railroad yard, you just end up doing a lot of this sorting. And it's I don't know, it's a fun mind game, I guess. Getting the right cars on the right track for the right train for the right time. That Milwaukee hopper is called an air slide hopper, which was used for, oh, never mind. Let's look at this. A BNF unit and a recently renumbered sky blue Jeep 7, I think it is. Nice. Those aluminum ingots came down from the Ferndale Alcoa plant north of Bellingham, and they're being shipped to California. Well, I guess we're going to leave those two cars on that track and proceed down the line, get back on the other track.
I need a way, Bill.
Just wanted to show you that shelf one more time. Well, and that brings us to the end of another model railroad operations video. I hope you've enjoyed the rail fanning today. I didn't do a lot of talking, but we got to occasionally just sit back and enjoy ourselves here. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch some of the other videos on this channel, but if you don't, I encourage you to check it out. There's that NP caboose. They started painting the cabooses green before the BN merger actually happened to test out the colors. The two companies were working together on it. Kind of fun. And with that, this is Burr Stewart wishing you much fun with trains.
You talking to me? No? Where? Right here. No. Somebody else did that. I was fishing over one track.